Yo, what up, my jabronis? Hey guys, it's me, Cynicalex, and I want to talk about the uniforms today, because I've made videos about all of these characters already, but I haven't done a video just about the uniforms, and there's still about 3 days, thanks to who told me that, left on the uniform sale, so I wanted to cover that. I also wanted to cover the uniform collection briefly before we started, because I think it looks really cool, but also have some issues with it, so let's get started. Now, the uniform collection for Captain Marvel, of course, includes all 4 of the new uniforms for the 2 new characters and the 2 existing characters, and then you got Korath down there at the bottom, who's just there. And while the 1 million gold is nice, the 375 crystals is probably the more attractive one, but it's on a timer. Now, we've seen this timer before. It was on the Monsters Unleashed variant uniform collection, and obviously I never got it, so that's just saying gold now. And while I do think the 375 crystals is a good start, it's definitely better than some of the other rewards that some of these other ones have, like 150 biometric selectors. It could definitely be double, even triple. Why not give 1 uniform back as a refund for getting all 4 of them to Mythic? The amount of resources you actually have to expend to get all 4 of these uniforms to Mythic is tremendous, and believe me, I know, because I have 1 of them at Mythic and I have 2 of them at Heroic and 1 of them at Legendary, and I'm being bled dry. So if Netmarble wants to encourage people to spend more of their resources so that they're then pressured into spending money later, why not make these additional temporary rewards actually worthwhile? Because at this point, at 375, honestly, don't do it unless you were gonna mythic them anyways, and you have all of the resources saved up prematurely. I would not bother rushing for this. I personally contemplated rushing to get this. No, it's definitely not worth it. However, if you're very close and you're struggling with Nick Fury, just a tip, just a small little tip. In the X-Force Armory collection, you of course have Cable's Gene, and you will get a mythic ticket that you can use to bump Nick Fury's uniform from Legendary to Mythic. It's not a Mega Mythic. It doesn't have those gray wings behind it. Remember that. But it is good enough to get it from Legendary to Mythic. So you'll skip the last step. And probably Nick Fury's is the most expensive one and the most difficult one. And frankly, if you think about it, the only way you're going to rank up his uniform, Nick Fury's uniform, quickly, fast enough, because if you're just collecting 20 bows per day for his uniform like I am, there's no way you're going to finish it in 9 days, because you need like 900 bios. You're going to have to use either plenty of tickets for uniforms or 1 mega mythic. So using 1 mega mythic uniform ticket for 375 crystals back really doesn't make any sense. But you know what else doesn't make any sense? Other things. I don't actually know. I don't have an example for you. Anyways, let's jump into the uniforms. I've already created new columns and rows, or actually not columns, just rows, for all of the new, no, not this one, for all of the new uniforms for this update. So if you want, you can always take a look over here and see my kind of summary of the uniforms in terms of where they are without them, where they are after them, and what the name of the uniform is. None of the new uniforms have any special properties, but I did highlight all of the characters, including Korath, who just doesn't exist on the uniform page because he doesn't have a uniform, for, you know, just quick observation. Now, I'm going to just basically discuss what I've given them as far as scores go here, so I'm not actually going to refer to this actively. I just wanted to point this out to you guys and remind you of it in case you forgot. Also, in case you forgot, if you want to make a copy for yourself, if you want to edit this directly, you do not send it. Oh, I need to figure out what his base stat is. I'd call him a B+. He's about Korath's. Anyways, if you want to edit this directly, you cannot edit my version because, well, it's mine. What you have to do is you have to click File here at the top, and you have to click Make a Copy or Download As. Do one of those two, and you'll have your own copy that you can edit and change. It won't update with my updates, but you'll be able to put whatever you want here if you think that I'm wrong, or if you just want to put your own notes on the side. Now, here we go, diving into the actual uniforms. I think the one that people most want to know about, holy crap, is Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, if you're strictly looking for an upgrade to the character specifically, it is a must-buy, because this is a very powerful upgrade for Captain Marvel. Not talking about her tier 3, just talking about tier 2. It's very, very strong. She gets super armor, so you don't have to worry about getting guard broken against world bosses or ABX, and she gets a ton of damage bump on her skills. Now, yes, she does lose the kind of signature ability of her Miss Marvel uniform, which is the 5 seconds of immunity that bumps up to 6 seconds and change when you have her at tier 2, but In this game, unfortunately, survivability and defense is not rewarded by pretty much anything in any game mode. So if you actually want to push higher levels of World Boss Ultimate, higher scores for ABX, or pretty much anything, I mean, even higher levels of Shadowland, this is definitely the uniform to do it. Additionally, because of the 4th skill, iframe ignore, you will be able to bring her into PvP and have some success. There's been actually a lot of success with her, especially at tier 3, but that's not an investment that everyone can make. Keep in mind also, though, that if you are bringing her into PvP and you want to be very successful, you probably need to give her a CTP of Destruction or an Obelisk that has Guard Break immunity, because the super armor will not be enough in that case. You will need the Guard Break immunity to avoid getting stun locked by characters like Quicksilver and other characters that penetrate Strife, etc. But in terms of the character herself, is it a must-buy? Yes. Now, in the larger meta, is this a must-buy? I think if you don't play ABX, it's not. And basically that's because she's not going to be, I don't think she's going to be #1 for any other game mode besides ABX on her specific days. She's absolutely, without a doubt, even at tier 2, level 60, she is #1 for the universal female hero day, which is currently being occupied by Medusa. She's definitely a step up from Medusa. As far as her value against Thor, if you have Thor tier 3, it's a little bit up in the air. It's not as clear-cut as I would like it to be. I think she outscores Thor, but I don't think for lower scoring players it's going to be a huge bump. So you can also consider that. If you don't really care about ABX and you don't really care about playing Captain Marvel in other game modes because she's not Sharon Rogers level powerful, she's not Luna Snow level powerful, or Cable with his uniform level powerful, then you really do have to ask yourself, well, where am I going to use Captain Marvel? Now, there is also the small possibility, I would say it's probably less than 50% chance, but there is a possibility she gets a uniform for endgame that buffs her even higher than this. There's also a possibility that they buff this uniform, I don't know, but I just wanted to make that clear distinction. If you love playing with Captain Marvel, or if you just need a higher ABX score, this uniform is a must-buy. If you say no to both of those questions, you could probably skip this one. Will it look weird on your account if I roast you? Yeah, maybe. Are people going to ask you, why didn't you buy Captain Marvel's uniform? Yeah, probably. But anyways, you maybe just be saving your crystals for something else, like Endgame or the next update, which might be important as well if you've been paying attention. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of give both sides because that's how I feel about the majority of these uniforms. The second, probably most curious uniform is Nick Fury. And Nick Fury, of course, is a curious uniform because he's a paywall character and because he looks so much cooler without his uniform. And I think that is actually a big deal in this case because his uniform does not add very much to the character's skills. Of course, it adds a lot to his base stats. Of course, it adds the all attack, all defense. It does enhance his 5th skill as well as his tier 2 passive. It adds incapacitation immunity. It adds the 55% increased damage rather than 50%, but I don't think that that is necessarily enough. Oh, and I think the all defense goes from 30% up to 50%. No, it's still 30%. So it's just a 5% increased damage dealt to supervillains, which is honestly negligible. And then the immunity to incapacitation. The immunity to incapacitation is alright, but it's not worth buying the uniform. As well, I don't think the buffs to his 5th skill are also worth buying the uniform. So I do think that, again, this is definitely a fan purchase, but it's not a must-buy. If you love Nick Fury and you want him to be as strong as possible, not as cool looking as possible, there's a difference. If you want him to be as strong as possible, you should pick this up. And if you want to use him and play him as much as possible, yes, the uniform is going to add quite a lot of stats to him. I mean, just switching between my heroic uniform and my regular uniform, I'm gaining over 2,000 physical attack. We're going from 1410 all the way up to 16, almost 3,000 physical attack, and I'm not even at Mythic yet, so that could probably go even higher. And that's really meaningful for speed types, especially who have low base stats. But again, if you're not playing with Nick Fury a lot, or if you're only using Nick Fury for his leadership/support role, if you're playing him like you play Ghost Panther or Coulson or Shuri or one of those types of characters, then no, definitely not. You can skip his uniform. There's not a whole lot of difference between his passives. You're probably not going to notice the immunity to incapacitation. And if that changes in the future and it becomes a super meta immunity, I will bring it up in a later video. But right now, I think it's something that, unless you're a dear fan of his, eye patch-less look, it's probably a pass. Next up, we have Ronin, and Ronin is an interesting one because whether or not you have his uniform, I mean, Annihilation, we're not even going to talk about it, but whether or not you have his uniform, Ronin basically sits outside the meta. That's just kind of par of the course. So you're not getting your Winter Soldier type thing. You're not getting your War Machine type thing. However, I do need to say this: if you're a massive fan of Ronin, because I am, you should get this uniform because it does make him playable. Now, that is something that we can't say about every character in Marvel Future Fight, so it's important to point that out. Before his uniform, he was not playable. I literally could not play Ronin. I would only use him for his leadership and possibly for his 20% ignore dodge in very, cute situations of Corvus World Boss Ultimate when I was just trying to troll people and confuse them. But it's really not something you would buy a uniform for regularly. Same goes for this one. The only exception, and I've said this in a previous video, but it bears repeating, the only exception is if Kree Justice ends up not being patched. If this damage reduction continues to apply to all allies, you may want to pick up this uniform strictly for its PvP potential, in Conquest especially, but also in Timeline Battle. I mean, especially if you put him up with 2 universal villains to take advantage of the leadership as well. It doesn't even have to be a villain, actually, just a universal type. You could do Ronin lead plus Captain Marvel tier 3 plus Wasp, and you've got a very potent team. Now, all of your damage is stacked on one character, and so if Captain Marvel dies, you're basically screwed. But if Captain Marvel dies, good luck killing a Captain Marvel tier 3 with 60,000 HP and 60% or 62% decrease all damage received. I mean, it's like Blue Marvel on steroids, featuring debuff immunity 20 out of 25 seconds for the entire fight. It's pretty bananas. So I do need to point that out. So from an individual character standpoint of view, he's still just a Shadowland character primarily. He can do, as I pointed out in the coverage of his specific character only video, he can do world boss now, but again, he's not going to be meta. He's not going to push the highest stages on his own, but he's got a very powerful leadership and possibly a super powerful passive. So I would say that this is more of a purchase consideration than Nick Fury. It's not as must-buy as Captain Marvel, but it's probably in the recommended category, unless you just never play as Ronin and you're never going to use his passive or his leadership. If those things don't appeal to you, then you can definitely skip this uniform, and then it just becomes a matter of how many crystals you're going to save or not. Finally, I want to lead off with Minerva. Whew, Minerva. Very interesting character. Now, she is good without her uniform, but this is definitely a huge jump in power from her base kit, and so I think this is pretty much a must-buy, straight up. She's a very strong character. She's a villain. She's combat type. She's going to do a lot of different things for you. She's got all defense down. She's very fun to play. She's got large AoE, very cool animations. She's got summons, self-buffs. She's got it all. Yeah, and I just think she's a very, very strong character, and she's very easy to get. And so I do think that I strongly recommend getting this uniform. This character is going to help you out with pretty much any content you want to throw at her. Her damage is fantastic, even if you don't give her a CTP, because she has some chain hit damage on her own, which synergizes with all of her cancelable skills, like 3 cancel, 5 cancel, 4, 5 cancel, 3 cancel, 4, etc. And it just looks amazing to pop off multi-snipe and just watch people absolutely melt. And it does have some PvP potential because of the penetration and the immunity, although it doesn't have iframe ignore, which would have been kind of insane. But I do think that, well, I can't say it's a must-buy, or if I've said that, I just want to walk back a little bit from that, but I do think this is strongly recommended, and while this uniform is good, this is much, much better. It's just a straight-up crazy bump. Now, the last thing I do want to talk about, just briefly, and then I want to get your opinion on, is Day 1 uniforms. And this is something that's been brought up on the Reddit multiple times over the months and years and updates when we do get MCU-themed updates where characters get uniforms on the first day that they're released. So Black Panther comes out, Killmonger gets a Day 1 uniform, Shuri gets a Day 1 uniform. Ant-Man comes out, Ghost gets a Day 1 uniform. This movie hasn't come out yet, but the update for it came out. You know, Minerva gets a day 1 uniform, Nick Fury gets a day 1 uniform. What do you think of this habit and this track record that Netmarble has? Do you think that it's unfair because it basically never gives you the opportunity to play with the base model character? Do you think it's annoying that you're basically automatically having to pay an additional 1,000 crystals when you unlock the character because it's released on the same day? It's basically a different character if you don't get it. Or do you think that it's good to add additional looks to a character and give you more options and, you know, allow you to kind of invest selectively where you want to and allow you to have more potential on a character than not? Because that's another thing that uniforms give you, is they give you more potential for power. You know, we've been screaming for a long time for uniforms for the likes of Ronin or Odin and other characters like that. If they had gotten day 1 uniforms, would we still be saying the same thing? I don't know. Yeah, there are still a lot of characters that have never gotten a uniform, but rather than being kind of dropped onto that list of, you know, I'm released and it may be a year or more before I get a uniform, they're immediately included on that bump and they immediately have that additional stat bonus to put them on level immediately to compete with those already uniformed characters from past updates. So let me know what you think about that. Let me know what you think of the breakdown of the 4 new uniforms and which ones you're purchased or will purchase or won't purchase. Subscribe if you enjoyed the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.